What up? What up? What up? Welcome into another edition of Greenwood. Then the post-game special, post-series winning special. Celtics advance to the Eastern Conference semifinals. As always, it's your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me today, as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Maneikis. Let it all out, man. Celtics are moving on.
Let's go, baby. Marcus Smart redemption game. Joe Mazzulla going crazy in the fourth quarter with the lineups. Whatever, dude. Whatever. It works. We're
you know
here.
What, Greg?
We won.
I blinked for a minute in that fourth quarter, and I thought for a second, I thought you got in the game. I honestly thought that you might have been on the floor because
Peyton Pritchard was on the floor.
Dude, Joe Mazzulla was making substitutions like we were playing hockey all of a sudden, and I couldn't keep track of and it was, it was in between one of the 4 times that the Hawks threw the ball off the Celtics out of bounds because they couldn't. I've never. There's so many things that happened that I've definitely never seen that in a game before. Never mind, they did it earlier in the quarter too. Trey did it on the baseline once, and I was like, oh, that was interesting. Never seen it, and then 3 times in a row. Just a weird night, man.
I thought after Trae Young did it twice, right? One of them, he threw it off of Smart's nuts because he loves throwing balls off of Smart's nuts.
Yeah. Dude, I thought I was going to start something. If you remember back to that, obviously what you're referencing here, that game right towards the end of the season when Marcus got thrown out of that game, right?
I don't know if he got thrown out, but he definitely took Trey to the ground on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but so when that happened, and then Smart and Trey were kind of laughing about it, right? And then DeAndre Hunter throws the ball off of Al Horford, and I was like, all right, Quinn Snyder, I know you only have 1 timeout left, but you guys clearly can't get the ball in bounds in the coffin quarter. Like, maybe you should use that timeout. This is pretty much your season on the line. So it was actually kind of cool to see the other coach not call the timeout because it was pretty obvious they needed one.
Something's going on with these coaches and timeouts these days. Mike Budenholzer the other night.
I can't wait to talk about the Bucks.
We'll talk about that in the back end of the podcast here. But I mean, I even said it. I was so happy that when Joe Mazzulla used one of our final 2 timeouts down the stretch before we got to that coffin corner debacle and Bogdanovich was at the line for those 3 free throws. I texted our group chat. I was like, if Mazzulla doesn't call a time, I was assuming Bogdanovich is going to make the free throw, obviously. If he doesn't call a timeout, I may have to fly to Atlanta and he'd kick my ass in a jiu-jitsu match. I'm going to challenge him. I don't care. Like, if he doesn't call a timeout, I was going to lose it. But the Celtics find a way to prevail. They're moving on. Before we get into a morning box score, Greg, what's the emotions or feelings? Because Adam and I had to come on here and do a therapy session the other day for how we were feeling.
Takes that may age poorly.
You know what? They might, but you know what? Adam and I, we did an Instagram live earlier today, and we talked about it. And there's a few people that reached out saying like, "Hey, we needed that." But it was one of those things that we know, like we still know who this team is, and we know what they can be, which is probably the most important thing when you look at this imperfect playoff scenario that we're looking at across the entire NBA. We know what they can be at their best. But just that morning and the way it was so visceral watching that game. I mean, you got a taste of it tonight because I know you missed some of the game, some of that game 5. And because of the way Adam and I reacted, you were like, I'm kind of scared to go back and watch it. And like, so I just think that therapy session was needed. I know that that's not going to be who they are. And ultimately, this was the likely result. But you saw tonight, it wasn't easy getting there.
Well, here's the thing. Like this podcast, we're fans first before anything else. We're 100%. Fans, right? So like in those podcasts where you're just like super reactionary and you get emotional, that's just how fans feel about the game. This is real conversations that fans have. The next night, it might all change. But when you're doing a podcast over every single game, when you live and breathe with every single shot, with every single miss, with every single make, sometimes you say some shit like Jason Tatum doesn't step up in big games. Jason Tatum steps up in big games. Like when you guys went there, I was like, okay, these guys need some sleep. They need some coffee. I don't know what they need, but here's
the new take on that. He just doesn't step up big in home games.
Okay.
Think about it. Game 6, Milwaukee on the road. Game tonight on the road. Maybe it's a road thing. I don't know. We needed that, but just once again, what's your feelings right now?
I'm chilling, man. I'm chilling. I came upstairs to watch the second half, like in my little studio. So I've just been in this chair for the past hour and a half. Normally I'm downstairs. I've got like Danielle's watching a show on the big TV. I'm normally watching the game on my laptop, kind of just hanging out, taking some notes as the game goes on. But I at halftime, I was like, babe, I got to go up. I'm going to watch this game on my own. I'm going to be pacing like a maniac. Just kind of leave me alone. So in the fourth quarter, when I saw the Celtics flip that switch, the defensive switch, I was just like, all right, we got this. We're good. As long as the Hawks cover +7, I'm good. And then it ends up being 8. So I lost my bet.
I couldn't even put money on this game. I was after a few nights ago, I just couldn't do it. For me, it was the Jaylen Brown block into the Jason Tatum putback was the first time I felt like, okay, I think this game is ours. But for those of you listening, let's do what we always do here, and let's cue up a morning box score. Boston Celtics advance to the Eastern Conference semifinals to take on the Philadelphia 76ers. They close out the Atlanta Hawks on the road 128-120. For the Atlanta Hawks, Trae Young, 30 points, 25 of which came in that first half. 30 points, 10 assists on 9 of 28 shooting. 14 points and 11 assists for DeJounte Murray. 16 points for John Collins. And 20 points and 6 rebounds for DeAndre Hunter, who actually did most of his damage in the second half, got in a little bit of a heater. As for the Celtics, Greg, when the Jays score over 30 points, what happens?
They get dubs.
That's fucking right. They get dubs. Jaylen Brown leads the way with 32 points, 5 rebounds to go along with it. Jason Tatum, who on the road steps up in big games, 30 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 steal, and 2 blocks, just filled the stat sheet in every way imaginable. Al Horford, 10 points and 12 rebounds. Marcus Smart, great game for him tonight. Really set the tone from the beginning. 22 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 17 points off the bench for Malcolm Brogdon, your NBA 6th man of the year. And Celtics talked a lot about playing with better pace. I think they did that tonight. They win the fast break battle 18-4. Send Atlanta off to Cancun, a game late, but send them off nonetheless. Celtics win the series 4-2. It's on to Philadelphia. But before we do that, Greg, looking at this game tonight, what do you think were the most important factors in the Celtics ultimately being able to separate themselves from an Atlanta team that was pretty locked in, and it felt like for large stretches of the game probably outplayed the Celtics, or at least were more aggressive? What do you think were the major factors in the Celtics being able to pull away?
What's that number right there, Will? What this mouse is?
I can't see it right now. I can't
see it.
Oh,
no. Okay. Well, it's a 7. It's a 7. You can't see that mouse flying around there?
There we go. I got you now.
Okay. Yeah. 7, as in 7 turnovers on the game for the Boston Celtics. That's it. We only had 7 turnovers in this fast-paced game, 24 assists to 7 turnovers. That is a 3-point-something to 1 ratio.
I'll tell you what is good. It's a good ratio.
really good. And just like, look, I mean, Jason Tatum's stat line with no turnovers with that game that he had 14 rebounds. The fact that in big games, Jason Tatum is now also getting between like 11 and 15 rebounds in seemingly every single big game, that just speaks volumes to the size of Jason Tatum and the willingness of him. He spoke in the post-game interview on the court. He was like, I don't ask my guys to do anything that I'm not going to do, right? He's going to crash the boards. He's going to dive on the floor. Even though when he dives on the floor, it's not graceful whatsoever. It's kind of like Tom Brady sliding down early. You know what I mean? But we got to start with Jason Tatum. He was great in this game. Obviously, with Jason Tatum comes Jaylen Brown. Both of those guys were unreal. They made great plays down the stretch. But my shout out to my bandmate David Price, who's watching the Celtics. He's become a Celtics fan over the years, and he texted when Tatum had that step back 3 and then the put back dunk. He was just like, Tatum, just texting me this long ass Tatum thing. He said, dude, when he had that put back dunk, he ran out of the room screaming. I was right there with him. I'm sure everybody in Celtics Nation had the Jason Tatum face. The only thing that I was just like, oh, so Tatum's just going full Kobe here. He had like the Kobe scowl on his face for the first time. It was great. I mean, I texted you at one point in the game, we need a little F you Tatum tonight. Like at some point we needed that. And that's what I think that was late in that game, that step back into the put back. That was the moment of him taking over. Because I think Jason Tatum's game tonight was for all the stats I just laid out, 30 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 steals, and 2 blocks. It was somewhat understated for different parts of the night. Like it wasn't a game where it felt,
I don't want to say you didn't feel his presence because that's not right. But there's some games, where it's just, man, this was a Tatum night. It just was everywhere. This was spread out in different ways. It was very much more paced out, I guess. I'm struggling to find the right words that I'm looking for, but I think he did it in a really dynamic way that makes it sometimes hard when you think about, do we want Tatum to be that? Oh, look at Jaylen Brown tonight. Jaylen Brown, they said before the game, he wanted to be aggressive. He was freaking aggressive tonight. He was looking to go score that basketball, whereas I think Jason Tatum was looking to do a little bit of everything. You know what I mean? And it's really awesome to see the development of Jason Tatum to that. And the rebounding portion cannot be understated, right? Because the Celtics were getting killed at certain points on the boards, and it felt like that was going to be an area that was really going to hurt them in this game. Jason Tatum was huge, especially where, we said crazy Joe Mazzulla played a decent amount of stretches today with Grant Williams all of a sudden at the 5. Mm-hmm. And so that left Jason Tatum to do a lot of damage on the boards, and he stepped up to do that.
Yeah, let's talk about Grant a little bit, man. So I know that Adam has been big on the where the heck has Grant Williams been this entire series, and Grant finally got his opportunity, played 17 minutes, was in there in crunch time.
In and out, depending on when you were looking at the TV.
Yeah, we were texting back and forth. I was like, listen, man, I know that we need some size on the court because the Hawks do crash the boards, but you play Derek White over Grant Williams 100 times out of 100 times, unless you're Joe Mazzulla. But shout out to Grant, man. I thought he played great. He only hit that 1-3, but he had that big charge that he took on John Collins. He had a steal around half court, and then almost immediately got a backcourt violation. But I shouldn't be dribbling. I'm going to stop right now.
I 100% thought that was coming, and I will say it was heads up of him to realize that he had 1 foot over, 1 foot back, and he kind of balanced himself out to be able to get rid of the ball. So give him his credit where it's due. I didn't think it was going to work out, but it did.
Yeah, it was a nice adjustment to kind of have Grant in there. It's kind of weird that he outplayed Rob in minutes. You see Rob only played 16 and a half. Grant played 17-22. A lot of weird Joe Mazzulla stuff in this game, man. Like, that's one of my big takeaways from this series is like Joe is very much figuring this shit out as he goes. Because like down the stretch, when it looked like he wasn't going to play Marcus Smart, and he was just going to roll with Brogdon, White, the Jays, and Horford. And then all of a sudden, Smart's on the court. And then, I think he took out White at that point, and Brogdon was still on the court. And then Brogdon, missed a 3. And then Brogdon came out, and Grant Williams came in. And then Grant Williams came out, and Rob Williams came in. It was just like, what is happening right now with these lineups? Whatever it was, it worked. The Boston Celtics advanced. And Joe Mazzulla, he's figuring it out, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing for next round, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, is I got no clue what to expect.
Well, hey, next round, it's not Joe Mazzulla against Quinn Snyder. It's Joe Mazzulla against Doc Rivers. That's pretty even.
Yeah, yeah. But despite Doc Rivers having the advantage in history, that history is not so great. So, it will be a very interesting matchup. But yeah, it was really hard to figure out some of the different Joe Mazzulla lineups. I think one thing that overall was important with this team, and I mentioned it in the top of the morning box score, is it felt like when they were playing with pace and they were moving the ball off of getting going in transition, this team looked like the team that we expect them to be, that we want them to be, that they can be. And I think that was really important. Now, as always, the goal is to do it a little bit more consistently, but they did it enough tonight to get the win. And I think those moments, especially when they were doing that in the fourth quarter, were what kind of were the differentiator for them to get over the hump late in the game.
Yeah, let's take a break right now. And then I still want to talk a little bit more about this game. I'm not done with it yet, Will.
Yeah, take a break. We'll come right back. All right, Greg. So I know you got some more on your mind here with this game before we leave that and start to look into the future here. What was something else that stood out to you that you still want to talk about?
Jaylen Brown, man. I don't think we've touched enough on Jaylen Brown because you just talked about the pace and the fact that they were pushing the ball. And I think that's what JB did great all night. He was out in transition. He was looking to be aggressive. His comments coming into this game was that he wanted to be the authentic version of himself, someone that plays downhill, that gets out, finishes in transition. 6 for 8 from 3 for Jaylen Brown. They started the game. I think they did a little like double floppy action on the sideline, got Jaylen Brown a little corner 3 to get going. And then from there, he was on. 6 for 8 from 3 is huge because Jaylen has not been shooting the rock well from 3-point. And I was just so happy to see him stay aggressive throughout that game and just do what Jaylen Brown does, man. And Jaylen Brown is always out in transition. He's always attacking. He was always looking to push the pace. And it was nice to see everybody kind of recognizing that JB was, willing to get out and run, because as we saw in our men's league game last night, when we added our shout out to our guy Remy, when you have someone that's just willing to run, everybody else is like, all right, like we know that we have that we can go to. Just get the ball to JB and he's going to push it, and then we can get action off of that. And I thought JB did a great job all night creating opportunities in transition when seemingly there wasn't anything there.
Yeah, it was infectious. And, I think one of the other things that I want to talk about here before we wrap this up is the Marcus Smart game. I thought this was a really good Marcus Smart game. I thought, defensively and offensively, really, to start this game, he really set a tone, which of course, it's going to balance out over the course of an entire NBA game. But the way that he came out from the start and the way that he was very much in control in this game. There was very few hero Marcus Smart moments, if there was any, that I don't even know if I'm thinking of one.
Well, when he initially came back into the game, don't forget this, right? He comes back into the game, immediately turns the ball over, and then misses 2 threes. So
okay, so there was that's there
possessions where I was like, oh shit, like Marcus is fucking
right.
up again.
That's why, as I was saying it, I was stumbling a bit, because I was like, I think I'm saying this, but I feel like there was one. I just wasn't thinking of it. That's exactly what I was trying to think of. There are those particular moments, but he rebounded to not continue to go down that path, which I think is huge.
Well, here's the thing, that the adjustment that the Celtics made and the adjustment that Smart made is that when they were sending 2 to the ball, when they went inverted pick and roll with Smart screening for Tatum, right? They were trying to get Trae Young onto Tatum, and they just sent 2 to the ball, right? They left Trae just for an extra beat on Tatum, and then he had to scramble back to Smart, and Smart was in that short roll position that Draymond Green has made so famous in Golden State, and Smart hit Horford for that corner 3, and then he had another short roll where he hit Horford again, but Horford missed a 3, and then he had another short roll where Trae was just late getting back to it, and Smart had that layup, right? So the Celtics realized, like probably watching game film, that was there. They took advantage of it. They abused Trae Young, who turned back into a pumpkin in the second half. You know what? One thing I really like about Trae Young, I like how his nose gets so red. You notice that? When he plays, his nose is just like Rudolph, man. It's so funny. I don't
notice it.
The game tonight.
I don't notice it with him as much. Nikola Jokic, I always notice that with. I think Nikola Jokic, and his nose makes him look like he's the most tired man that's ever walked the face of the earth, but he plays 45 minutes like every single night. I don't know, it's remarkable, but no, I have not noticed that with Trae Young. But yeah, I mean, he was so in control of that first half. Those 25 points. You talked about how comfortable he was. And, I mean, this was part of the reason that Joe Mazzulla played Grant Williams a little bit more, get a little bit more switchy. And Trae really struggled.
Can't just sit and drop against Trae. Can't just throw Al Horford against Trae time after time and just let him cook. So I thought the adjustments the Celtics made on Trae Young, when Trae gets going, it's really hard to stop that. He's just that dynamic as a pick and roll player. He had a great first half. In the second half, the Celtics just recommitted to just showing a few more bodies, just having high hands. We had a few blocks on Trae. Well, dude, the defense in the last 5 minutes was unbelievable. Also,
if you could bottle up the Celtics' first 5 minutes of defense tonight and their last 5 minutes of defense tonight, those are what you want to see out of the Celtics. It was that middle part where it kind of went up and down a little bit.
They've got the switch, right? They've got the switch, just like Jimmy Butler has got the playoff switch.
He does. Before we get to Jimmy Butler, now that we can put the Atlanta Hawks to bed, we've tucked them in, we've read them a lullaby, they're gone. See you later. Good luck in the offseason. We're moving ahead. Philadelphia 76ers, still waiting to see. They've been given a 48-hour grace period here where Joel Embiid has a few extra days to get a little bit healthier since the Celtics weren't able to close out the series earlier. Game 1 is going to be Monday night of the Eastern Conference semifinals. So the Celtics will have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to recoup. The Celtics now with Milwaukee, thanks to, as mentioned, Jimmy Butler, eliminating the Milwaukee Bucks, are now the team that controls home court advantage across the NBA playoffs. So Second round is always coming through Boston. The entire playoffs will come through Boston as long as the Celtics are alive. So looking ahead to the matchup with the Sixers, Greg, we're going to go even more in depth on this on Sunday. We'll bring in Adam here. We'll get a 3-man weave going. We'll set this up, but let's just start now. Let's do a little tease of this right now, Greg, because we've been quite chesty when it comes to talking about this matchup with the Philadelphia 76ers for the last month or so, as it looked like this was going to be the ultimate pathway for the Celtics. That second round was going to match up with Philly with a banged up Embiid. Despite the podcast I did a couple of days ago, I still feel really confident that this is a matchup for the Celtics, made for the Celtics to be successful, and that especially when you factor in Joel Embiid banged up, James Harden came into the playoffs a little banged up, and Doc Rivers being the head coach and his reputation, this is set up for the Celtics to be able to take care. I don't know what my call is going to be yet for how many games, but this series is set up for the Celtics to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, with the Hawks, something that I was texting with the group, and I was like, it's funny because we didn't think that they were the kind of team that could give us problems. But then when you saw how everybody on the court started to attack and started to believe themselves, John Collins started to play well. DeAndre Hunter got it going. Bogdanovich got it going. It was Trey, it was DeJounte. They were just attacking us from so many different angles. Whereas like, oh, now that like the recipe, it's almost like they watched the games against the Magic. Right. And they were just like, oh, look what the Magic did.
I think that's your favorite reference for how to play the Celtics, is looking back at those Magic games.
Right. So like when you look at the Sixers, they don't really have the talent around the roster, around Embiid to make that happen. Right. Tobias Harris ain't going to do it. Sorry, Tobias. Maxey is
he had a great game 4 against Brooklyn.
Yeah. Maxey's the one guy who like kind of fits that mold of a guard that normally gives the Celtics issues. Harden, people talk about Embiid needing to get better. Maybe this rest was even more important for James Harden because he's looked like a shell of himself. Like they play George Niang a lot. Like George Niang is not going to take anybody off the dribble. PJ Tucker is not going to take anybody off the dribble. There's just a lot of guys that they can't dribble, pass, or shoot, right? They got a bunch of guys that can shoot. They got Embiid that can draw double teams so that they can get shots, but there's not a lot of guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot on that team. And with the Hawks, John Collins can dribble, pass, and shoot. DeAndre Hunter, all the guys that I just named. So like I'm not worried about the Sixers. I think the Celtics win in 5 or 6 games. The round that I'm worried about is the round after that, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, as we learn, we got to take this maybe a little bit more closely to one game at a time before we get too far ahead of ourselves. But the other part with Philly, right, is I think, and you talked about this as we were texting during the game, is sometimes like really freak athleticism can give us a little bit of issues, right? And that's not really Philly's bag, right? Nah. There's no crazy athletes that you think of. Maxey has the speed of a crazy athlete, but there's not really anyone that's jumping out of the building. There's nobody that's going to have that type of an effect on the game. So this does really feel like a matchup that lineups well, especially when you factor in that, when we think about this going 5, 6, if it gets to 7 games, like that means Embiid's going to have to do a lot. He's capable of it when healthy, but it does not sound like he's going to be anywhere near that, even with the 48 hours of rest. And so, I think this becomes, once again, we get back to, have the C's learned any lessons as we come into the series, right? Not knowing what lays ahead for anything potential in the rest of these playoffs. But I think it does make it really important to come out in these first 2 home games and secure home court. Like you have home court now. You've been given this gift. Jimmy Butler has given you this gift. Do not squander it. Do not squander it. Come out, and especially when you know that Embiid's going to be out there testing it out. If he plays game 1 or if he waits till game 2, do not fuck around with this gift that you've been given. So I think that's going to be a really important test for the Celtics in these first 2 home games against the Sixers.
Well, let's not forget the Celtics swept the Nets last year in the playoffs. They can sweep a team. It's possible. We've seen them do it. They need to, because this series went a game or 2 too long, right? It's going to be physical against the Sixers. Embiid's going to throw some people around. PJ Tucker's going to make things difficult for us.
He's going to tackle some people.
Yeah. So we're going to have some issues. with the Sixers just in terms of physicality. So let's just make sure we dispose of them in 4 or 5 games. That's kind of what I'm expecting, to be honest with you. With Embiid not being 100%, I just don't think the Sixers have enough to take down the Celtics. Even with Embiid at 100%, I was going to pick the Celtics in 6 games. So with Embiid not being 100%, James Harden not really being 100%, I just don't think they have enough, dude. So yeah, I think the Celtics will not buck around and find out. I think we'll be able to get rid of them pretty easily.
Yeah, I'm leaning Celtics in 6. That would have been my pick with Embiid now, and I rather than change it to 5 after I was predicting a sweep against the Hawks. So now I'm scared off from this confidence. So I'll probably stick with Celtics in 6, but we'll get back to that a little bit more. We're going to record a 3-man weave here over the weekend before that game on Monday. So we'll have some more coverage leading up to that. But before we leave you tonight, we're going to take a quick break and let's take a look around at the rest of the NBA playoffs. All right, Greg, we've been waiting to talk about this. We've alluded to it several times here. The top half of the Eastern Conference playoff bracket is not what a lot of people were expecting, to say the least. We have, which is just a 1990s throwback in every sense of the word, Miami Heat, New York Knicks square off on Sunday at Madison Square Garden for the first game of the Eastern Conference semifinals. The Knicks are hosting, as a 5 seed, awesome, are hosting the second round of the playoffs. But let's start with the Heat here, man, because them taking out the Bucks, that had the most direct implications for the Celtics. As we talked about, they are now the team that controls home court, no matter if it's in the Eastern Conference or if it's in the NBA Finals against a Western Conference opponent. The Celtics will hold home court advantage. Jimmy Butler, holy effing shit. That dude, just tell me what you're thinking about Jimmy, what your impressions of Jimmy Butler are after this last week or so.
Dude, I just think we as an NBA collective need to start reevaluating the way we talk about Jimmy Butler. Like, he's arguably the most successful Eastern Conference superstar of the past 5 years. He made it to a finals. It was in the bubble. Yeah, I get it. He made it to an Eastern Conference finals and almost took out the Celtics. He was one shot away.
Real quick, after having watched what we just did these last week or so, how much retroactively are you even more amazed that shot didn't go in last year?
I'm very amazed, dude. He was wide open. He was wide open. And if he had taken it to the rack, he's probably going to get an and 1 on Horford on that play too. Right. It was after that play that he had off the inbounds, which what the fuck were the Bucks doing on that play?
They subbed out Brook Lopez right before that.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck the Bucks were doing in that moment. And then they didn't call a timeout with 0.5 seconds left. Did Bud just not know they had a timeout? What? Nobody on the court knew they had a timeout. And then Giannis's comments after the game, everything's just weird in Milwaukee. But Jimmy Butler, that's who we're talking about here, man. Dude, I would say of all the players in the Eastern Conference in the playoffs, is there anybody that you would rather have in a fourth quarter of an NBA playoff game in the Eastern Conference?
In the Eastern Conference, no, it's Jimmy Butler. There's nobody that can do right now. So let's just look at right now the final 4 teams here: Heat, Knicks, 76ers, Celtics. It's Jimmy Butler, and it's as much as I love Tatum, it's not even close.
He's just got that dog in him, man. And hopefully this is the year where Tatum or Brown looks at Jimmy and's like, all right, enough of this shit, dude. You're not going to continue to do us. You were going up against Drew Holiday, great defender, but undersized. It's the same thing how I always say that Marcus Smart cannot guard Jimmy Butler. He's just out of his weight class. Marcus Smart doesn't guard Jimmy Butler. Drew Holiday probably should not have been guarding Jimmy Butler as much as he was guarding him, but they didn't have anybody else to put on him unless you want to put Giannis on him, which you probably should have, but Coach Bud loves Giannis in that rover role. So, whatever. But I think with the Celtics, you're going to see a lot of Tatum on Butler. You're going to see a lot of Brown on Butler. I don't think that you're going to see much of Smart or Derek White on them.
Let's not jump ahead too much quite yet to the Celtics Heat matchup, which, by the way, we spent several weeks talking about trying to avoid from the play-in, and we may get it in the Eastern Conference Finals. Do you see the Knicks as a challenger for the Heat? Let's start there.
Yeah, I do. I don't
think there's a guarantee. As much as Jimmy was so special, I don't think there's a guarantee they get by the Knicks.
That's fair. You know what's interesting? Before we start talking about the Jays against Jimmy Butler, let's talk about Josh motherfucking Hart going up against Jimmy Butler, because I think that's going to be the matchup to watch in the next series, because Josh Hart gave Donovan Mitchell problems in that series against the Cavs. So is Josh Hart, I mean, I would say he's probably like the type of physical defender that might be able to match Jimmy Butler. We'll see. I don't know who else they could really throw at him. Maybe this is a moment for RJ to show those defensive shots.
It feels like RJ, I don't know if you can throw Grimes out there against them, but I mean, it's probably an RJ Hart small dose of Grimes if needed, but it's probably an RJ and Hart assignment.
Yeah, for sure. The big thing with the Knicks is just Randall. Is Randall gonna be Randall, or is he gonna continue to just not really show up in the playoffs? Jalen Brunson
hurt again, so we'll have to see what that diagnosis is.
Exactly, but Jalen Brunson, man, he's so good, dude. He's so fun to watch. If I'm the Heat, I'm worried about who the fuck is covering Jalen Brunson, because I'll tell you what, it ain't gonna be Duncan Robinson. Kyle Lowry, probably not, but he is the type of body that, like, Jalen Brunson's kind of a bully, right? So he does have that body.
Body wise, it's a pretty funny matchup. Just Jalen Brunson against Kyle Lowry. Yeah, definitely.
Well, Gabe Vincent is feisty, so I could see Gabe Vincent like doing a decent job on him, but I don't know, man. I don't think they have enough to slow down Brunson, but I think Jimmy Butler is probably going to be enough to get them over the hump against the Knicks.
It's such a tough call, man, because you look at the lineup that Jimmy Butler closed out against the Milwaukee Bucks with. Cody Zeller was on the court, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, and I believe was it Duncan Robinson that was out there. They like half the team fouled out by the end of the game. Maybe it was Caleb Martin that was out there. Either way,
it was
majority of those guys were undrafted. Cody Zeller was out of the league until about 20 games left to go in the season. So those are the guys that we're working with. Remember, Tyler Hero's still going to be out through this series. So just from a body and a talent standpoint, the Heat don't have as great as Jimmy was. They just don't have a lot of room for error. Bam defensively is always great. What you get from him offensively is always kind of a gamble.
It'll be interesting to see Bam against Mitchell Robinson, because Mitchell Robinson
dominated Mobley and Mobley and Jared Allen. Mitchell Robinson just punked the two of them in a 5-game series.
Mitchell Robinson's fucking huge.
Yeah,
he's huge.
And we said that when he was up against Rob a bunch of times in the Knicks Celtics game, where it was, man, I always thought that they were kind of similar until you see them play against each other, and you're like, oh,
in person,
Rob. Yeah, and then you see, oh no, Mitchell is stronger and about 2 to 3 inches taller.
Maybe even more than that, man. He towers above most guys on the court. Bam's undersized as a center. So it's going to be interesting to see how that matchup plays out. Are they going to be able to take advantage of, just any switches or, whatever the Knicks defensive scheme, which I think will be better than what Bud's defensive scheme was. They're not just going to sit and drop the whole time. So we'll see. I'm excited for that series. Definitely going to tune in for every one of those matchups. And, whoever comes out of that series is definitely going to be hurting, because that's going to be physical as fuck.
Yeah, that's going to be a series where I was texting with our buddy Liptak today, and I was telling him, I don't imagine it's going to be a struggle to get to 100. It might just be a race to 100.
Oh, yeah, hit those unders.
Yeah, exactly. Whoever gets to 100 is going to win those games, because it's going to be scratching and clawing. But we got ourselves some fun second-round matchups here in the East. We got Heat Knicks, and then we've got, of course, 76ers, Celtics. Really, really fun setup here for what should be a really fun next 2 weeks of basketball with both of those series. And then real quick, before we jump off here, let's just look over to the West for a second. Nuggets Suns is the one matchup that we know. I don't really love that matchup for the Nuggets, but also at different times, the Suns in that Clipper series just look like a team that only played 8 games together. So I would think the continuity of the Nuggets is something that will give them advantage, but there's a lot of star power all over this, man. I mean, Nikola Jokic, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, these are championship type of guys right here.
Yeah, I was thinking about that series a little bit, and the one matchup I'm interested to see is Aaron Gordon on Kevin Durant. I just want to see if Gordon can kind of like unlock that defensive potential. I think Bruce Brown and Caldwell Pope are actually the types of defenders that could give Devin Booker not problems, but could just make him work a little bit more. Devin Booker is that dude. But on the other end, it's like, what the fuck are the Nuggets going to do? Exploiting Chris Paul. How are they going to exploit Chris Paul? Is Jokic just going to dominate Ayton, or is Ayton going to, he's had some moments in the past where it's been like, oh, DeAndre Ayton kind of guards Jokic well a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of weird. His length, like Jokic can't really bully him for some reason. So that'll be an interesting matchup. And then, are the Suns going to be able to take advantage of Jokic on the other end? Because if Jokic is going to come up to the level of the ball as he likes to do versus sitting and drop, which is probably the smart thing to do rather than sitting and drop against the mid-range shooters of the Suns, he could get in foul trouble pretty easily. If Devin Booker just attacks his hip, if Kevin Durant is able to draw him away from the basket, maybe they play 4-on-3, and that there's just a bunch of different interesting matchups within those defensive liabilities within that series. And I'm really, really interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah. And then on the other lower part of the bracket, just talking about star power, we're one game away from getting Steph Curry versus LeBron James.
Let's go. I'm in for it. Let's see it one more time.
I agree. As much as I've enjoyed this Warriors King series, I think it's just It's time to just see Warriors Lakers. Let's see what this looks like. And I mean, then you're looking at, like I said, you're looking at Jokic, you're looking at Booker, you're looking at Durant, you're looking at Curry, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, all on one side of the bracket. That's a loaded side of the bracket right there. Last thing before we hop off here, Greg. So game 6 for both Kings Warriors and Grizzlies Lakers will be on Friday night. We'll be recording sometime on Sunday. So if there is a game 7, it'll probably be happening either during or after we record. So by the time we record on Sunday, do you think that the Warriors and or Lakers close it out?
I think they both close it out. Yeah. I think they're both at home. The Kings had their chance, man. They had their chance. They blew it. Harrison Barnes missed that 3. Then De'Aaron Fox breaks his finger. Once that news came out, you just knew that this is what the Warriors do, man. We had a chance in the finals last year. When they're down, you have to step on their fucking throat, smash their skull. You have to like burn the carcass. You have to do everything that you can.
Punch them in the balls
to make sure that they are not going to get back up. And the Warriors with Steph Curry, with Draymond Green, with Klay Thompson, they get back up.
Yeah, they get back up. I'm with you. I think likely it'll be Warriors Lakers. So maybe by the time we record on Sunday with the 3-man weave, we will have the full Elite 8 breakdown of the NBA playoffs. As we sign off here, Greg, do you have any thoughts on the Ime Udoka to the Rockets? Me and Adam were supposed to cover that for a little bit, but everything just went off the rails with that game 5, and we needed to do what we did. But any thoughts on the Ime Udoka going to the Rockets?
Confirmed. James Harden going to the Rockets. They'll be tag team in the clubs.
That seems like it could be in play. I thought it was a little bit of I think it makes a lot of sense for what the Rockets need as far as what Ime in a basketball sense is going to bring with, accountability and defense and that type of stuff. I thought it was an interesting choice for Udoka that he would jump for a Rockets team when it looked like, he talked about the Pistons and Raptors kind of talking to him, but I mean, not waiting to see what happens in the playoffs. Like that Milwaukee job could be open. Like, wouldn't you, if you're Udoka, maybe try to go to Milwaukee instead, but I don't know.
Maybe he needs a year where he's kind of like on a team that doesn't have any expectations, not really in the spotlight. So another year goes by. He's
not a lot of national TV games where people are making memes of him about him being horny or doing other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So he needs a year to kind of rebuild his reputation around the league. A couple of years from now, the media will forget. Like this next year, him coaching, that's when people are going to be talking about all the shit. Year 2, people are going to forget about it.
Yep, that's a good point. I do think that's actually probably an underrated point. So Ime Udoka off to the Rockets, no longer a problem of the Boston Celtics. Boston Celtics' only problem is old friend Doc Rivers and the Philadelphia 76ers Monday night on TNT. 76ers Celtics game 1, TD Garden. We'll have a lot more in-depth preview for y'all coming up to get you ready for that game. We will unite our powers of the 3-man weave. We'll be recording that on Sunday, dropping that Sunday night, Monday morning for your listening pleasure. Greg, it has been a journey through this first round. We're off to the second round. I'm excited to see what comes next for this edition. Anything else you got to say here? And then, as always, let us know what we're going to hear on the way out.
Y'all know the drill. Black Sheep Optimist, Skywalking. Peace, everybody.
Deuces.